Hello again, I'm Matthew from thewetpen.com, and here I have another Indian fountain pen to show you. I suspect that most of you have already seen this one. It's been pretty popular this year, and I bought it a few months ago. Maybe you haven't seen it in this color though. But before I get too far into this video, I want to mention that this morning I restocked my inks on my website, so if you've been waiting to try one and to support my channel in doing so, now you can. There aren't a ton of them, I'm afraid, so you might not want to wait too long. I'm in the process of ordering new bottles now for the next batch. Anyway, this is the Magna Carta Mag 600, but this one is the gorgeous blue version from Goulet Pens. I'll show you this material a little more closely in a minute, but first let me just show you the overall shape and design of the pen. The cap of the pen has straight sides with no taper, and a gold-plated clip with a ball end. I really like the style of this clip that attaches with a pair of studs at the top. They give it a more robust, almost industrial look, and that really suits the shape of this pen nicely. In fact, I really prefer the shape of this pen to the newer Mag 650, which doesn't seem to have as much distinct character as the 600, although they're both really nice. At the bottom of the cap, there's a gold band that says Magna Carta around the front, and on the back we get the Magna Carta logo. The end of the cap might look flat at first, but it's just slightly domed. The sides of the body of the pen are also completely straight and parallel until the final inch or so, where it tapers down to the slightly rounded but basically flat end of the pen. I really like this body material. This is made out of stacked pieces of acrylic in alternating colors. A nice light blue and a sparkly dark color, either black or very dark blue. This material is a nod to the old stacked celluloid pens from the 1930s and 40s, like this Parker Vacuumatic. When I bought this one, I was told that it was from the 1940s. You can see it's from back when Parker pens were still made in the USA. There are a couple of big differences between this material and the Magna Cartas. The vintage pen is made of celluloid, which isn't really made anymore because it's so dangerously flammable, among other reasons. And the Parker is quite a bit smaller than modern pens in general, but especially this Magna Carta, which is a large pen even today. The cap unscrews in about 1 3/4 turns, and that's just about perfect as far as I'm concerned. The cap threads are perfectly comfortable, no problem there, and the grip tapers gently down and then flares out right before it reaches the nib. For me, the size of this pen is just right. It's large, but not too large, with a comfortable grip and good balance. The cap does not really post, which is a little bit disappointing. For me, that's about the biggest drawback with this whole pen. It'll sort of stay on for a moment, but you can't write with it that way without it falling off. This is a cartridge converter pen, which you can see if you unscrew the section here. It comes with a Schmidt cartridge converter, and if you wanted to, you could probably eyedropper this since the threads are nice and tight. And although there's no place for a rubber gasket at the joint, I wouldn't really be worried about the leakage. But of course, what makes this pen unique is the nib. This is the flexible 14 karat gold No. 6 nib that makes this pen so special, along with the ebonite feed. Unfortunately, a lot of pens that are sold as having flexible nibs or soft nibs are really nothing of the sort. Any of you who have used the Yovo-made flex nibs that are now marketed as soft or elastic instead know that they're pretty much just normal nibs with a funny shape. This is another pen that I got a few months ago. This is a Radius 1934 Settimo. Radius is an historic brand that was recently revived by Leonardo. And the nib on this is a Yovo Elastic Fine, but if you take a look at it in use, there's really no flex or elasticity to speak of, which is what I expected when I bought it. I just think they're pretty nibs. But the Magna Carta is different. Let me show you. For normal writing, it's nice and smooth with just a hint of feedback. But when you give it a little bit of extra pressure, you get some nice, easy flex. The performance of the pen for flexed writing depends heavily on the ink that you use. This ink is Diamine Night in Jodhpur, just because I like the sheen and it's an Indian-themed ink to suit this Indian pen, but it's not the greatest for this nib. I occasionally do get some railroading. I've had better luck with my own Rainier Blue, but the point is that you'll need to experiment to find a combination from your collection that works well for you. But that's part of the fun of this whole hobby as far as I'm concerned. All in all, it is a really excellent flex nib. But this is not the only good flexible nib on the market. Let me show you a couple of my other favorites and how they compare. First of all, there's the Pilot Custom Heritage 912 with a Falcon nib. This pen is considerably less expensive than the Magna Carta, and it's also smaller and more conservative in appearance. But if you want the experience of writing with a gold nib and a similar softness to the Magna Carta, I'd say that this is a good option. It doesn't flex quite as wide as the Magna Carta, but since I rarely want a full flex anyway, that's fine with me. More common though, and much less expensive, are the steel Ultraflex nibs made by Kanwrite in India, and often rebranded and sold under other names. In the US, Fountain Pen Revolution is probably the best known, and oddly enough, their nibs seem to have better flex than other brands. I have them in a couple of Jaipur pens, and this is an Ebonite Click Falcon that I bought with the FPR nib installed. It cost about $35 back when I bought it. But here are a couple of others that I have handy. This one is an Osprey Madison. You might pronounce that Osprey in your part of the world, both are correct. And this is a Kanwrite Heritage. And as you can see, they're all pretty much the same nib with cutouts in the sides, but I'm not going to compare all of them today. I'll just show you one of these FPR nibs. I think I'll go with the one in the Click Falcon. I should mention that this Click does not have an Ebonite feed, but it still works just fine for me. So here's the now familiar line of the Mag 600, and here's what we get from the FPR nib. I'm a big fan of these FPR nibs. In fact, my very first video on this YouTube channel a few years ago was about these nibs. They provide a really nice writing experience, not too scratchy like the untipped nib options out there, and with a good amount of easy flex. And since they're almost perpetually on sale, they cost as little as $15 to $20, depending on whether you get the nib mounted as a unit with a feed or not, or up to $50 if you want them in a Yovo or Bach nib unit with an Ebonite feed. Writing with the FPR nib feels a little different than the Mag 600. There's a little more bounce maybe, but they're very similar, and the price difference is dramatic. That's because I paid $420 for this Goulet Pens exclusive Mag 600, and as much as I love this pen, that is something that I would not do again if I had the opportunity. Pen Chalet's version of the Mag 600 is also really beautiful, and costs less. That would be tempting, but very likely I'd go with one of the awesome resins that they have at Pen Chalet for $100 less than I paid. or maybe one of the beauties that they have at Galen Leather for $350. Those are still really tempting. But that's just a matter of price, not a fault with the pen. As is the case with most flexible nibs, this one might benefit from a little bit of smoothing on the interior of the tines, but even as it is, it's really very comfortable to write with. Certainly no worse than the Pilot nib. I mentioned earlier that the Mag 600 is a large pen, so let me show you a couple of different size comparisons before I wrap this up. First, here it is next to a Lamy All-Star and a TWSBI Eco. And you can see that it's a bit bigger, but it's not huge. But compared to some of my other handmade Indian fountain pens, it's pretty typical. Here's the Vizier Meteor Shower, and here's the Lotus Everest. And if I lined those up properly, you'd be able to see that they're all about the same size. And now here's my Magna Carta Start, which is a medium-sized pen, and my Epitome Emerald, which is much more compact. And it's quite a bit smaller than my oversized Indian fountain pens, like the Ranga Splendor and the Giant 9B. And that's it. I still have at least 7 more new fountain pens from India to show you, so I'm gonna have to figure out a way to do production line videos or something, or I'll never get to them, but they should all be coming up soon. If you'd like to see those videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and don't forget that like button down there if you enjoyed this one. Take care everyone, and enjoy your fountain pens and ink. I'll see you next time.